Hi, it's Mark again with ExoticCar PlayPlace, and today I'm going to continue on the series of the BMW E60 M5. So before we get started, guys, I just want to give a shout out to all of you guys. Thanks a lot for subscribing. I see my count is climbing steadily every day, and that only happens because of you guys. I do appreciate it, and thanks again, guys, for that. But moving right along. So today's video really is a short video to talk about the BMW E60 and the SMG, which is a sequential manual gearbox. And what that really is the original iteration of BMW's automated manual transmission, which effectively was a way to shift the gears without a third pedal. It was a manual gearbox with a single clutch transmission that was operated through a signal from the shifter, went down to activate a solenoid, which then actuated the clutch movement. That was as simple as that. A very simple way to operate basically the next level from going with a 3-pedal, a manual transmission. So there's always been arguments for the SMG transmission versus the manual transmission in the E60 M5. We know that lots of people have real strong beliefs about the manual transmission being the only way to go because it's truly the true driver's transmission. The SMG, some people argued, other than the fact that it was not quite as reliable as owners would have liked, the SMG, in some people's minds, take away from the experience, the driving experience that you'd get from a manual transmission, the third pedal. Well, I can tell you this much. I've been driving manual transmission cars for years. I've been driving a lot of different cars, manuals, automatics, dual clutches, everything. I've driven a lot of different cars, and I can tell you this much. I love a manual transmission, and it really boils down to the type of car you're driving. I think if you're driving a small, lightweight, kind of very bare essentials type car, a manual transmission seems to do wonders. It feels great, gives you more of a way to control the engine, RPM, obviously, and with that, smaller cars, smaller engines need a better way to keep the engine at the appropriate revs because they don't have the typical power bands that you have in a big, large displacement engine. Now, in an E60 M5, you are able to get a 7-speed SMG transmission, or you were able to get a 6-speed manual transmission. And a lot of people opted for the 6-speed manual because it takes you back, throws you back to the days of driving a manual transmission in many other cars. Now, I've driven that, and it's an awesome option. But the SMG really does suit that car. The gearing is perfect. It's the gearing that will take you to relentless top speeds, but it seems to be ratioed just perfectly. They've essentially created a transmission that is well suited to that motor and that drivetrain. So that's that in the SMG. Now we move into the modern day BMWs. We're talking about a BMW M3, M4, and a lot of the other modern day M cars now have a DCT, dual clutch transmission, or a double clutch transmission. Now, a double clutch transmission operates quite a bit differently. Yes, the signal comes from the paddle, which it does in an SMG, but it also does some other things. Because it has two clutches, it actually has one clutch associated for every odd set of gears, and it has another clutch which operates every even set of gears. So what you effectively have is a clutch and a gear that's ready to go every time you're changing. So if you're going from first to second, you're activating that clutch, but your clutch on the second to third is already ready to go. So that gear change is extremely quick because you have two clutches that are basically ready to operate almost simultaneously. Aside from the computer making sure that everything stays aligned, you basically have a situation where you've almost eliminated intentional delay between shifting between first and second, second to third, third to fourth, fourth to fifth, and so on and so forth. So the DCT, which you find in many, many modern day cars, and again I mentioned the M3, M4 as an example, are exceptional transmissions. They're extremely lightning fast. They're in there with the likes of the Ferrari and the F1s, the modern day F1s, stuff that you'd find in, say, a 458 Italia, 488, things like that. It's an awesome shifting transmission. Now, there you have to wonder, well, why wouldn't everybody buy or outfit a car with a DCT? Well, DCTs are great. They're exceptionally well performing. There is a downside, and the downside is the simple fact that they're extremely large and heavy. Now, does that offset the fact that they hit lightning shift speeds? It doesn't offset that, no, because the shift speed is still insanely quick. But it does add an immense amount of weight, bulk, and the car actually has to be designed accordingly. That's why you'd have to ask yourself, why isn't the Lamborghini Aventador currently outfitted with a dual clutch transmission? It still has a single clutch transmission, kind of like the Gallardo. Why is that? Well, because that is the older generation chassis. And when Lamborghini developed that, they put in a single clutch transmission. And now that we have evolutionized the dual clutch transmission, as you can see, the Huracan came out. It was designed around a dual clutch transmission. Unfortunately, the Aventador, still the chassis resides in a form that only accommodates a single clutch transmission or potentially a manual transmission, which of course is not available. But this takes us back to the M3, M4. Dual clutch transmission. What is better about a dual clutch transmission over a single clutch? Well, shift speed's one. Fuel economy is another one, of course. And sheer drivability. Anybody who's driven an SMG from a E60 M5 can appreciate in default mode, it is very sluggish and it kind of lurches you back and forth. If you leave it in the default setting, it's very slow, it's slow shifting. It's really horrible driving in default mode, okay? That's where the DCT comes in the new M3, M4 cars. It eliminates all that sluggishness. It eliminates all that poor, slow engagement off of idle. It eliminates all that. It also improves fuel economy. So that's where the dual clutch transmissions reign supreme over an E60 M5. Now, you might ask, is there anything better about the E60 M5 SMG transmission over the modern DCT? Well, I would say in summary, yes. Number one, obviously there's a little bit less weight in a single clutch transmission like in the SMG. So it's less weight, which weight is your enemy in performance cars, okay? So that's part of the thing. But I'll be perfectly frank. When you're shifting the gear in S6 mode, when you dial in the SMG to S6 and you're in the top most aggressive setting, the M mode, and you're shifting, it still shifts very quick. It's probably more in the range of 150 milliseconds versus the DCT speed of about 50 to 60 milliseconds. So it's dramatically slower. It's about 100 milliseconds slower. But it's that 100 milliseconds that gives you that hammer. And every time you feel that sensation, that adds to the actual element of that driving experience. And that's what gives you that feel. Now, I've driven the dual clutch transmissions, and I love them. They're a lot of fun because you just rip through the gears, and it's seamless. It feels just spectacular. But I can tell you honestly, after living with one for a while, I've driven a single clutch, or I've driven dual clutch transmission cars for a while. After a while, that novelty actually kind of wears off because it's so seamless. You actually lose that sensation, that violent shifting action, which adds to that whole experience. And so, again, if I can summarize everybody, where does the SMG win in the whole scheme of things in the transmission side of this designs in BMW world? Well, let me just say that it wins. The SMG wins on the sheer experience. When it's dialed into the most intense, quickest shift speed setting, it is just a lot of fun. It's a lot like the early Lamborghini Gallardos. They just hit, and it's more of an abrupt shock, which, obviously feels a lot kind of more intense. It's just more of the experience. Now, if you're looking for the modern day, the latest, the greatest, the DCTs obviously have it for fuel economy, for outright shift speed, and they do it a lot better. Drivability is a lot better. So it really boils down to what you're looking for. Sadly enough, you can't interchange. The E60 M5 is strictly SMG or manual, and the new M3, M4s have strictly a manual or a dual clutch transmission. So the only thing in common there is what? The manual transmission, which is always a great default. So everybody, not sure what your thoughts are on this. I hope you guys liked this video. Thought I'd share a little bit with you what the difference was between the SMG and the DCTs in the BMWs. I just want to give you short and quick, a quick little demo. And again, everybody, if you like this video, be sure to lay a subscribe down there below. And don't forget to comment, like, share with your friends. We'll talk to you in the next one. Okay? Talk to you then. Bye-bye.